Commission resumes. We took a bit longer over the tea adjournment than we had anticipated, but we had a very important housekeeping meeting, and the agreement has been reached on the allocation of times in respect to the expert witnesses, which are a very worthwhile exercise. I want to congratulate the parties concerned in the fact that the agreement has been reached in this way. But that doesn't concern you, Mr. Blow. What concerns you is that you're still under oath, and Mr. Tipp has got a few more questions to ask you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
A few or a good many, I'm not sure which.
Well, Chair, I did notice that qualification with some anxiety.
I've qualified the qualification.
Mr. Blow, perhaps we could, it may be useful just to get quadruple E19 up on the screen again, but let me, whilst that is being done, I just want to take up something that you said shortly before the break, when there was some discussion about the foreseeability or otherwise of NUM officers being attacked.
Yes.
And you said, well, that that sort of thing hasn't happened in the past, so we didn't foresee it, essentially to that effect, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Now, what I want to debate with you is the question of whether Lonman and your department in particular in that circumstance could rely on what has happened in the past in order to govern its arrangements. And you do that in your statement on a few occasions, and we'll look at some of them.
Okay.
And again, what I'm going to echo, Mr. Blow, is the requirement of scenario planning, of
yes.
prediction, on the basis of a particular assessment of a particular mood
yes.
at a particular time, especially in the circumstance where, as at 10 August, you had, in the first place, an unusually large number of people in a march, correct?
Yes.
And secondly, a mood involving levels of aggression that had not been encountered before and that both you and Mr. Sinclair found very disturbing, very worrying.
Yes.
Now, when you've got that, can you sit back and say, well, we'll conduct our security arrangements in the manner that we've always conducted them, and that will be good enough? Don't you have to do a lot more?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that when you look at a situation like what we were faced with, you will obviously devise your strategy to what you believe will be sufficient to counter whatever threat that comes to the operation and people. So we really planned around those. We did not foresee that the strike would turn out the way it did.
Let me examine a particular facet of this. I can understand, let me make it clear, that where your concern is that there may be small pockets of strikers who tangle with small pockets of those who want to go to work, well, that is something that you deal with in the way that you are accustomed to.
Yes.
You deploy a detachment of security people, and they take whatever action is appropriate to deal with it.
That is correct.
That's correct. But when one looks at a different dimension of it, namely that there might be a large gathering of strikers and not small pockets, then that requires different planning, does it not?
It does, Mr. Chairman.
And I want to get the benefit and for you to help the Commission at that level. You see, whether one says, well, we anticipated that there might be attacks on Lonman facilities.
Yes.
Or whether one says we anticipated that there might be an attack on a NUM office, doesn't really affect the principal question, which is, what arrangements did you put in place to deal with a large gathering, another march? wherever it might be intending to go and whatever it might be intending to
Yes.
do.
Mr. Chairman, and indeed, even the NAM office is a Lonmin property. Also, our security is still and was at the time concerned with protecting the property as well as the people of Lonmin. And that whatever public gathering would take place or issues that would be flowing out of that public gathering, for example, public violence, that in our mind has always been a matter for the South African Police Services to deal with. And you would see, Mr. Chairman, that we had consistently engaged them in that period, or tried to engage them in that period in other instances.
Mr. Blow, what you've said now is, of course, a very important matter. And I've got no doubt that my learned colleague, Ms. Beloy, for SAPS will ask you questions about that in due course. But I want to ask you a general question about the place of SAPS in your planning. And it also goes back to the question of scenarios, prediction. And what I want to put to you for your comment in general terms is this, that even when you are seeking to secure the intervention of appropriate SAPS personnel, SAPS vehicles,
Yes.
then you need to be able to tell them what it is that you expect. Isn't that so?
Yes.
So your scenario planning is not something that is necessary merely because Lonmin Security need to have done it, but it's necessary also to tell SAPS what you expect and what they should be there to deal with.
Yes.
That didn't happen, did it, as at the 11th of August?
Mr. Chairman, we contacted the SAPS throughout. For example, on the 10th that morning, on the 11th that day, we contacted them, attempted to contact them, to give them events as they were unfolding.
Yes, but what I'm really after is this theme again, perhaps I should call it that, of the scenario planning.
Yes.
You see, on the 10th of August, you had information that there was to be a large gathering, and that gathering would move to the LPD office. Correct?
Mr. Chairman, information on 9th of August that the gathering would move on the 10th to LP.
Correct.
That's
Thank
correct.
you.
Yes.
Yes. So you
Yes.
had it in advance.
Yes.
And that was a definite prospect.
That is correct.
And you were able to go to SAPS with a definite prospect.
That is correct.
And SAPS was able to react, and it did so by providing, amongst other things, 4 Inyalas,
That is correct.
which is a very significant security presence,
Yes.
plus soft-skinned vehicles and a large number of SAPS members.
Yes.
Now that I want to translate into the question that I've put to you again for your comment, which is that to go to SAPS in a meaningful way and to say this is what we have to deal with required you and Mr. Sinclair and the other management of security directly after the dispersal of the march on the 10th of August to say these are the things that we foresee could happen. This is the largest number of marches we have had. The level of aggression is the most intense that we have experienced.
Yes.
And we think that they may attack Lonmin facilities.
Yes.
We think they may attack NAM office. Doesn't matter what they do precisely,
Yes.
but they may do so also in large numbers. And if they do move in large numbers, we, Lonmin, cannot deal with it.
Yes.
Did you convey that to SAPS?
Mr. Chairman, correct. Even on Friday morning the 10th, as you've alluded to earlier, we had had an unusual experience also, I must mention, where SABC's response was unusually slower than we knew them to be. I'll give an example. At the Rowland four-way crossing, we had had SABC presence, but at that stage, it was only the Marikana SABC, who are normal crime prevention officers, not able to deal with issues of public violence. For that, you need POPs, Public Order Policing Service, and the like. Now, we had engaged with them, and then obviously better reinforcements, Mr. Chairman, as is mentioned, that for Nyalas. Then, that day, we were with the SABC at LPD when the members were dispersing. We were there with the large contingent of the SABC. That evening, we were in conversation, Friday the 10th evening, we were in conversation with members of the SABC, giving them all the necessary information to prepare as we were getting information. And, Mr. Chairman, it will also be able to be proven on telephone records and so on, the attempts we were doing to ensure that the SABC were aware of what is to unfold.
Mr. Below, let me put to you a specific question in respect of the position as at Friday afternoon, the 10th of August, and into the evening.
Yes.
Did you and your colleagues in Lonman Security identify the possibility that there might be another large gathering of strikers in the course of the early morning of Saturday?
Mr. Chairman, we got information that because the workers, we know when they dispersed, had said they are not going to go to work, so we knew that they would be gathering in a form of strike and do the normal things that they do on a strike, that is to gather and so on.
Well, that's a bit vague. Normal things that they do on a strike, what is that?
That they would be toy-toying, they would have a gathering, and just because when they don't go to work, they're not just sitting at their homes. They gather and make a presence. So we expected those things, yes.
And they would march as well.
Of course that they would march as well, yes.
Well, Mr. Blow, that the question from Commissioner Hemraj is an important one.
Yes.
Because that they would march as well adds a very, very important dimension to this. It's not just people gathering and toy-toying and supporting each other and so on.
Correct.
This is a march which is going to go somewhere by definition.
Yes.
Now, the question that I put to you was whether you and your colleagues had, as at 10 August in the afternoon or the evening, specifically planned for the eventuality that you would have another large march on Saturday morning, the 11th of August.
Mr. Chairman, yes. If there's a march, I beg your pardon, if there's a march, that is governed by the Gatherings Act. And when that happens, our role is to make sure that we inform the South African Police Services. So yes, we knew about it.
Well, that is a response that has built into it a large time delay, doesn't it?
I don't understand clearly,
well,
Mr. Chair.
If SAPs are not actually on Lonman premises,
Yes.
For you to inform them that there is an illegal gathering
Yes.
would require a good deal of time for SAPS to organize itself, to mobilize its personnel and its vehicles, and to get out to Lonman.
Yes.
In the meantime, you have a march which is going somewhere and doubtless has arrived there long before SAPS arrives there. Correct?
Yes.
Well, the question is now, what if anything, did Lonman Security plan in respect of what it would do if there were a march, or was the only plan that you would get hold of SAPS and tell them there was a march?
Mr. Chairman, the plan was that Lonmin would protect its property and its people to the best of its capacity with the available resources it had. However, and as I've explained, issues of public gatherings, we would expect the SAPS to fulfill their constitutional mandate and to deal with those. Now, obviously, if they hadn't arrived, we have got limitations where we can operate. We are not allowed to play as a paramilitary organization, for example, now, and police public spaces. Our jurisdiction is only within our property, and that is where we're expected to ensure that we, as best we can, look after that while we wait for the SAPS who will come and take control, even at our property, Mr. Chair.
But Mr. Blow, at late evening on the 10th, it must have been foreseen that there would be that there might be an unplanned march.
Correct,
the following
Commissioner.
day.
Correct, Commissioner. Even that was apparent when we were with the members of the SAPS. On the late evening on Friday, we were with members of the SAPS, and I'm sure some of them would have testified to that effect. If they hadn't, then, or let me rather say, we were with members of the Marikana SAPS on the Friday evening, and we share information as to what is going to happen the next day. So we expected them as well to know what was to unfold the next day.
I need to repeat a question. Forgive me, Mr. Blow, but
No problem.
did you say to the members of SAPS that you are talking about now in the course of the Friday evening that you anticipated that there would be large marches again on the following morning, perhaps fairly early, and that the level of aggression that had been seen at the point of dispersal might be present, and that they should be ready to deal with that?
We did that, Mr. Chairman.
And what did they say?
I want to repeat what I said earlier. SAPS during that time were unusually, I don't know whether they did not anticipate that the events would have turned as they did, as we now know. We were with members of SAPS, particularly at Marikana. We shared with them, and what we did say to them was we anticipated the strike to continue the next day. However, we would see how the seriousness thereof would be. But we definitely communicated with them throughout, Mr. Chairman.
In other words, if I followed you correctly, what you said to SAPS in the course of the Friday evening was that you expected more activity, but you would have a look and see what happened, and you'd let them know in due course. Is that right?
Not entirely, Mr. Chair.
Please correct me.
We would anticipate what would happen at our operations, and we would certainly revert to them. Yes.
Yes. You would, in other words, you would monitor the situation on Lonmin premises.
100%, yes.
And if there was suddenly a large gathering that was heading somewhere with ill intent, you would then get hold of SAPS and let them know.
100%, Mr. Chair.
And then the question is, of course, what in the meantime? And let me make it specific so that you can deal with a specific instance, which is, of course, the 11th of August and the fact that there was an attack by people who, on Lonmin security information,
Yes.
Were intending to burn down the NUM office and the Lonmin combi.
That is correct.
Now, we also know that the only Lonmin security presence that was in the picture in the course of those events was two security officers, Mr. Dibakwani and Mr. Motlachelwa.
That is correct.
Nobody else.
That is correct.
Now, was that they manifestly were unable to contain the situation? Correct?
If I may just explain, they, upon noticing the crowd, they went to the NAM offices to go and protect the people, which are now the NAM people, who are also Lonmin people. That is what they did, Mr. Chair.
Well, by protect, what do you mean by protect? They went to protect the people. How are they going to protect them?
They went, the strategy was to tell them that people are intent on coming and burn down these offices.
Yeah.
So please vacate these
That's
offices.
right. So they're going to protect them by doing what they endeavoured to do, according to the evidence, telling them that they must leave
Yes,
for their own safety.
for their own safety.
That was the form of protection, the only form of protection they could provide. It wasn't really protection. It was a warning
That
that
is
they
correct.
could leave.
Yes.
That's
yes,
all
yes.
they could do.
That's all they can do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Blow,
And they could do nothing to protect the offices from being burned down.
They were not able
Nor
to.
could they do anything to protect the combi, I think it was,
Yes.
from being burnt. That's right.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
What sort of protection is that?
It's to give advice that, and at the mines, there's this thing called you have a right to withdraw from an unsafe condition. It was on that basis.
I understand that. But they weren't really equipped in any way.
No.
They weren't intended to be equipped in a way to actually protect the physical office
No, they were not.
or
going
the
to be.
physical combi.
Yes,
All they could do was to tell the people to leave.
yes.
and Mr. Blow, of course, the position is that, as you've already remarked, the NUM office is a Lonmin property, but from the perspective of NUM, my client, an extremely important element in this is that in that office are contained all its records, all its membership records, all its records of grievances that it is handling. Everything, in fact, that sustains the life of a union was in that office. You would accept that, I suppose.
I would imagine so, yes.
And for NUM to be placed in a situation where the members present on the day had to make a decision as to whether they would abandon all that or try to defend the office was a situation that they should never have been placed in. That be fair?
That is so, yes, Chairperson.
See, I just want to explore a little further what you've said here. There are two questions. The first is, was it in fact the instruction to the security officers, Dibukwani and Motlachewa, that if there were a large march, their duties were solely to go to wherever that march was heading and to inform the people in that vicinity to flee? Was that the instruction?
Mr. Chairperson, we had always done that. Let me make an example. Close to Vonokop,
Example. The answer to the question I take is yes. That was their instruction. You're entitled to explain
Okay.
why that was, but let's just get clarity.
all right,
You asked a question, was that in their instruction? The answer, I take it, is yes.
yes,
You now want to explain why that was.
okay, yes, yes. Close to the Vonokop Stadium, we have offices there which we call Vonokop, I beg your pardon, Western Platinum offices. They're right next door to the Vonokop Stadium. On numerous occasions, when we had anticipated a strike and the like, maybe a gathering, we would take the decision to let those people vacate. And that is still the norm, even to this day. So that instruction was consistent with what we were accustomed to.
But what is, apart from the people who worked there, what was in those offices? Were there records and so forth which made the functioning of an organization like a trade union totally impossible if they were destroyed?
In the NUM offices, Mr.
No,
Chair?
no. We know what's in the NUM office.
Yes.
These offices you're talking about near the Vonokop Stadium.
These are Lonmin offices. These are technical offices.
Yeah.
So there would be all sorts of Lonmin property and equipment and the like, yes.
I want to be very clear about what you're saying. Mr. Blow, this question of the instruction. Now, it goes back to the issue of planning.
Yes.
Are you telling us that all your security officers are instructed as a matter of standing practice that if they encounter a large group, then they must go to wherever that large group is heading and instruct the people in that building, whether it's the Andrew Safi Hospital or NUM office or a Lonman office, to get out and go away, jump in their cars and flee? Is that a standing protocol?
Mr. Chairman, to say it is a standing protocol, and how we enforce this is really, Mr. Chair, for me to say this is what practice is. So I'm going to have to make examples to make this point clear.
The examples again. That is the standing practice.
But not the only practice.
Well, you can qualify in a minute. But
Yeah.
that is the standing practice.
Yes.
You're going to explain, and you're going to give us the qualification.
Yes.
All right.
Now, in the instance of, as I mentioned earlier, the Western Plate technical offices, that is usually what should take place. As I've said, that go there, assess the situation, people should vacate. There are other examples. One would think of other mine shafts where we had done those to say the people are best to evacuate and that their lives are protected. So that was sort of general practice that we had.
I'm asking, I'm putting my question at a slightly more direct level, Mr. Blow.
Yes.
I'm talking about a standing instruction. Is it a standing instruction to all your security personnel that if they encounter a large group, then that is the remedy? They don't try to do anything else other than to instruct those in the path to flee.
Mr. Chairman, that is why I said that is not the only thing. Because if while you are doing that, and that is to go and tell the people to evacuate, but you should also be mindful of your own life. You should do so being mindful not to put your life at risk. So it is just not the only thing that they should do and let people vacate. So let me make not an example, but let me paint a picture of a clear incident that had happened. At Career, there was somebody that was trapped in a hostel, and in that instance, we had no choice to go and extricate that person. So while on example 1, we wanted people to evacuate, but on example 2, we had to extricate the people, his family, so that we could save their lives.
I understand you to say this. Let me put it in simple terms. Assuming someone is employed as a security guard, whatever the title is at Lonman, and he's not quite sure what he's got to do. So he goes to you or Mr. Sinclair or somebody, and he says, look here. He says, what do I do if I come across a large group of strikers marching somewhere to a particular place? What must I do? How do I handle the situation? So the answer he is given, if I understand you correctly, is the following. Go to the place that they're heading for and warn the people there that they must get out because for their own safety. And if there's any danger for you, you do your best to keep out of danger yourself, which presumably means if you can't get to the place to which they're heading without being hurt yourself, you don't even go there. Is that effectively what the person would be told?
Mr. Chair, yes, that would be, to put it in a nutshell. Obviously, we have various procedures that govern that broad statement, but to summarize, that would be okay, yes.
Mr. Blow, to send 2 security officers when there's a threat of burning down a building is to use but a fraction of Lonman's resources, security resources. Now, was it not open to you, or whoever was in charge of security, to direct more resources to that area to deal more effectively with what was happening?
Commissioner, I can only think that those that would have given that instruction would have seen it best that it is best to protect the NUM office from, I beg your pardon, it's best to protect the people from going and attack either the people in the NUM office, rather let those people be evacuated.
If you only had 2 people who had a soft-skinned vehicle, that's all they could have done, isn't it?
Indeed, Mr. Chairman.
One can't criticize the security officers concerned for only doing that, apart from the fact that would have been their instruction. But there wasn't much else they could have done, was there?
Nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Now, what happened to the TRU that was going to come from Pretoria? That was discussed the day before in this currents book entry at 15:10 the day before. What happened to that? Had that come yet?
Mr. Chair, if I remember correctly, it arrived on Monday the 13th.
Yes, TRU, I know it was your own vehicle.
The RU.
Sorry, the RU, yes.
Yes.
It was coming from Pretoria, wasn't it?
Yes, because it was a Protea coin.
Oh, it was Protea.
hired
I see, it
in
was under
Husky.
contract to you. You could summon it if you had to.
That's correct.
Is that right? That only came on Monday.
That is
So
correct.
that wasn't any good on the Saturday morning.
I think it came on Monday.
But didn't you have some of your own as well?
We had, Mr. Chairman, on Sunday, we had 2 of Protea coin.
So
Lonmin
Protea
Security
coin.
didn't have their own.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
So
Mr.
on
Chair.
Saturday, am I correct in thinking, therefore, that on Saturday the 11th, there was no hard-skinned vehicle at all on the premises of Lonmin?
Mr. Chairman,
right?
there was.
There was.
One was at Carrier, and
Yeah,
one
I
was at Vonokop, where this gathering had taken
I
place.
see. So why couldn't that vehicle have been used to assist in protecting the NUM office?
I'm not sure by the people on the ground, Mr. Chairman, because those vehicles were also used by our members. You will see on the 12th, for example. So I'm not particularly sure of the judgment that was made on Saturday not to use that vehicle.
Well, you see, we know from the entries that were subsequently excised from the copy of the currents book that we were given, that already on the Friday night, rubber rounds had been fired at some of the strikers
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
because it was believed that they were intimidating some of the people wanting to go to work.
Yes, Mr.
And
Chairman.
they were effectively dispersed by that, weren't they?
That is correct.
Right. Well, was there any reason why attempts could not have been made to disperse the people who were on their way to the NUM office on a Saturday, instead of leaving the NUM office, if necessary, to be burnt down with all the records of NUM?
My response, and it's an opinion, Mr. Chair, I wasn't on the ground there. I would just say those 2 security persons saw that they would not be able to disperse that crowd.
And I think we've agreed that we can't criticize the 2 security people.
Okay.
They could only do what they did.
Yes.
Right. They didn't. But the question is whether there shouldn't have been more people, whether it was appropriate to only have these 2 security people who could do very little except warn the people, to only have those 2 people there to deal with the situation. That's the point. Now, how do you respond to that?
I do not think if a crowd of 3,000 was to be dispersed, that would have been effective. I honestly don't think that the capacity was enough to disperse a crowd of 3,000, because the one that was dispersed on Friday evening were just pockets of people. Yes.
Understand that. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Tip.
Thank you, Chair.
1 o'clock.
Yes, I see that. May I put just 2 questions?
You can put 2 questions, and then you'll continue on Monday.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions, Mr. Blow. First of all, once it became apparent on the 11th of August that there was a gathering in the vicinity of the Vonderkorp Stadium, and the information came out that the intention was that they would march to the NUM office and burn it down, was that was a serious development, was it not?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Was that conveyed to you? By Jock or anyone else?
Mr. Chairperson, I only became aware afterwards, after the march had taken place.
In other words, nobody conveyed it to you.
No, Mr. Chair.
Was there no practice in place or instruction from you that if something of that order should start developing, that you were to be informed immediately so that you could exercise the duty that you had in terms of the procedure to decide what should be done about it?
Correct. That was the case.
They should have and didn't.
Yes.
It was a breach on their part.
Yes.
And the second question is, do we understand then from what you have said about the position on the 11th of August that as far as Lonman security was concerned, there wasn't even a possibility that extra personnel might be deployed in the Wonderkop area to stop this march?
Mr. Chair, can you just elaborate a little bit?
Yes, I will. Forgive me. I know it was
you.
a bit cryptic. You've said that of the two, there were two security persons, officers there, and they saw that their only function was to try and persuade the Num people to leave, correct?
Correct.
Now, you've told us that that is what they should do because that's the instruction, correct?
Correct.
Does that mean that at that time, as far as Lonman security and the managers and the people in the Jock were concerned, they didn't even consider sending extra personnel there to try to contain and stop this march?
Mr. Chair, the people that saw this march were on patrol. Because of it was a weekend, so people were stationed to patrol. Now they saw it, and I suppose they probably would have relayed it to the Jock. And I think that the decision that would have been made at that point in time was do not try and disperse a crowd that large. Rather, go and warn the people to vacate the offices.
You're speculating.
I'm definitely speculating because I wasn't there, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to ask you one question before we go, and that's paragraph 24 of your statement, dealing with the events of Saturday, the 11th of August. You say you got to the office at 7:30, you went to brief your colleagues, and you received reports from the Midland bus service. Then you say you went home at 9 a.m. You deal with what had happened earlier, though. There'd been information about threats being made to burn down the NUM offices, and you say this: I had earlier in the day made calls to both the local Marikana police station and the Rustenburg cluster of the SAPs for increased police presence in order to monitor the situation developing at Lonman. I was concerned the SAP's response remained less than adequate. When did you make those two calls, the one to the Marikana police station and the other to the Rustenburg cluster of SAPs?
Mr. Chair, it would have been between, while I was at work, that was between the time that I had knocked on and then went home again.
Between 7:30 and 9?
Yes. In that.
Now, how long would it have taken the Rustenburg cluster of the SAPs to get to Lonman? Assuming they'd set about coming as quickly as they could.
Give or take maybe an hour, maybe 60 minutes.
Okay, and the Marikana police station people?
They maybe 10 minutes.
I understood you to say they really could only provide what I understand is known as visible policing. Captain Governor and his people.
100%, yes.
So they couldn't do much by way of protecting the office. That would have had to be done by the POP, by the POPs, is that right?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
They would be the ones that would have come from Rustenburg.
That is correct.
I see, thank you.
And these two phone calls were before you received the information about the the march to burn the NUM offices? These two phone calls to the police? Because you phoned to monitor the situation.
That is correct. So, sorry, Commissioner?
Was there a phone call to inform the police that there was now this march to burn down the NUM office after you received the information?
Commissioner, I can't really remember specifically, but I do know that there were telephone calls to the SABC, to the situation that was turning since the Friday, that was playing itself out at Lonmin.
I understood you to say in your statement that you left at 9, and then during the course of the day, you received a call that there was this information about the people going to burn the office. Is that right? So by the time you left at 9, am I reading your statement correctly? By the time you left at 9 to go home, you
Yes.
hadn't yet heard that there was this intention to burn down the NUM offices. Is that correct? Am I right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I
So, but somebody else who was there at the jock, the London jock, obviously received that information and would have been able to have contacted the police to ask them to come. But you can't tell us what happened in that regard. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
You yourself did nothing about it because you received the information when you were at home.
Mr. Chairman,
That's what you say, isn't it? You say, I drove home at 9 o'clock, and during the course of the day, I received this call from the EDM. Were you at home by the time you got the call?
yes.
Did you think of phoning the police?
Yes.
Asking them?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So did you? From your home?
I did because
What time was that?
I just don't know now, but if I had looked at the records...
No, you don't mention that in your statement. All you say in your statement is you had made phone calls to the police. No, I beg your pardon, I'm wrong. In paragraph 25 you say, upon hearing of the gathering of the group, that's presumably the information you got to the EDM, you further communicated with SABC and advised them of the developing situation. That's the position, is it?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Whether they came or not, how they responded, that's something you can't tell us from your own knowledge.
Yes,
Right. Thank you. 9 o'clock Monday morning?
that is correct. Thanks.